I'll go ahead and call this evening's meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals for the City of Florence to order. First item on this evening's agenda is approval of the minutes from April 22nd, 2001. The meeting minutes that have been submitted to the board. Are there any changes or amendments to the minutes?
No, I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
Is there a second? The ayes have it. Will all in favor say
Aye.
The ayes have it. The motion carries. The minutes are approved. For the next item on this evening's agenda is dated June 24th, 2021, appeal number BZA-2021-07. Variance request is for a variance from the fence requirement in table 3-8 of the unified development for a residential lot. Location is 1014 Halley Drive, correct? Halley Drive. Okay, tax map number would be 18005-01-028, and the owner of the record, James E. Durant. The applicant is also James E. Durant, and it's the zoning district for neighborhood conservation -61. And so the board will now hear from the city.
Thank you. And Mr. Durant is available on speakerphone. And I'll share my screen. Yes, the applicant is requesting a variance from the fence height and transparency requirements for a residential parcel located at 1014 Halley Drive in the NC 6.1 district. This area is in Pine Forest area across from the MUSC campus on Parcel Highway. Here's a close-up of the location of the house. And as you can see, it's zone NC 6.1, which is single-family residences. The zoning ordinance requires that in the front yard, the maximum height of a fence be 4 feet and the transparency be 50%. So picket fences mainly. And it says anything in excess of the maximum allowed height shall require variance, which is why he's here. The fence that he has constructed in front of his house is an 8-foot tall wood stockade fence, as you can see, and it completely obscures the front of the house. So this is the site plan and the details from the fence manufacturer. It's a 30 towards the front, 30 across the front fence. The variance conditions that a variance from the terms of the ordinance will not be contrary to public interest, where enforcement of provisions will, in an individual case, result in an unnecessary hardship. So the applicant is looking for a degree of privacy that would not be met by a literal application of the ordinance to his situation. That the spirit of the ordinance will be observed, public safety and welfare secured, and substantial justice done. The intent of the ordinance is to provide visibility and openness along the street in a residential area such as this one. The portion of the front yard closest to the house is enclosed, and the remainder of the front lawn is left open. The fence obscures the view of the home's entrance and windows with the exception of the garage and one window above the garage. Number 3, that there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to this particular piece of property. The layout of the site and lot dimensions are similar to other lots in the vicinity. There appear to be no natural, geographic, or infrastructural conditions out of the ordinary for this property. That these conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. Other lots in the vicinity are similar to this property in layout and appearance. Other properties would also be subject to these fence requirements of the ordinance. That because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance to this particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property as follows. Requiring adherence to the specifics of the fence ordinance would not prevent the use of the home as a single-family residence, However, the desired level of privacy by the current owner would have to be achieved through other means, such as an alteration of the house or vegetative screening. And number 6, that the authorization of a variance would not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property or to the public good, and the character of the district would not be harmed by the granting of the variance. The fence does inhibit view of the house from the street and adjacent properties, but a portion of the front lawn is left open and unobstructed. And that concludes the staff report. You do have in your packet a number of letters that Mr. Durant did address to you, explaining his reasons for wanting the fence. And he is available for questions if you have them.
Thank you. Is that all from the city? Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from members of the board for city staff at this time?
So one question, I'm sorry, just to make sure. So there was not a permit on record or anything on record prior to the fence being constructed, correct?
Permits are not required to put up a fence generally, but they do need to adhere to the requirements of the ordinance. This was brought to our attention by a codes enforcement officer who had received a complaint.
So there have been complaints.
Yes.
Thank you.
What are the complaints from the neighbors?
The main complaint just seems to be that the fence is unsightly and will bring down their property values.
What size is the fence on the bill?
It's 8 feet tall,
8 feet in the city.
4 feet,
Oh, and
In the
8 he
front.
has constructed, and a 4 feet is
the requirement.
requirement. Anything above that, they have to get a variance from the city. Thank you. Any more questions for the city staff?
Also, it doesn't meet the transparency requirements as well. Correct.
Correct. And Mr. Johnson just reminded me that they are supposed to get a building permit if you put up an 8-foot fence. But 8 feet is excessive. 6 feet is the limit for a standard fence.
Is that all the questions?
I don't have any more for the city.
Okay, all right, we will now, the board will now hear from the applicant. I believe this is Mr. James E. Durant.
So you're welcome to speak, Mr. Durant.
How y'all doing, Mr. Durant? The reason I got the fence up is because I was having problems with my neighbor since I moved here. I haven't been able to go on my porch in like 4 years. And I mean, I got people got VPN cameras on me. My life has been threatened. I've had guns pulled on me. I'm just trying to, the lady across the street at 1017, a while back, she lied. I mean, I got tired of being nosy and I cursed her out. And she, she went out of town. She got a screen on me, so I'm just trying to stay free. I've been a good boy since then. I've been minding my business. I put the fence up because she got her husband. He comes around every day. I mean, he tried to taunt me and get me into trouble and get me to revoke the screen on. So
Mr. Durant.
stay free. So I had to put me a fence to stop this nigga. This man harassed me every day. I've been harassed by this man. I don't even know who he is since I've been staying here. He's been watching me, stalking me. He know when I leave my house, know when I come back. I mean, he just doing stuff that can get me in trouble. I'm just trying to stay free, y'all. I need this fence. My wife bought it for me. I'm a disabled Army veteran. And
Mr. Durant, I am
Yes,
so
sir.
sorry. I need to swear you in first, and then I'm so sorry. I didn't want to cut you off. Okay, before you speak, I'm going to swear you in. Do you promise the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth?
it's the whole truth.
Okay, sir. You may continue with your statement.
I just don't know what else to tell you. I haven't had no privacy since I stayed in my wife. She used to be right here. She can speak for me too. These people have been harassing me and being in my business since I've been staying here. And I'm sometimes I'm gonna just get tired of it. I'm not bothering nobody. I don't have no record. And I hate that this lady got a screen on me from lies. But I mean, I can go on and on, y'all. But I just hope y'all spare me my fence that I need. I'm not trying to get in no trouble. I ain't trying to bother nobody. And my wife, she got something to say too.
Okay, ma'am, what's your name?
My name is Mr. Rod.
Mr. I need to swear you in before you speak as well. Do you promise the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth, ma'am?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you so much. You may continue.
Yes, I bought my husband this fence because I'm so tired of this going on in this neighborhood. It's been going on for a while with us, and everybody's entitled to their own privacy. Everybody should be able to be at peace in their own home. Privacy shouldn't be invaded like our privacy being invaded and being harassed by these neighbors. And these cameras on the back end pointing on my house. You can't even walk out your front door with keys. It is sad.
I mean, everything that I wrote in my statements is true. And I mean, it's ridiculous. I got police reports y'all can check. I mean, these people have been bad bothering me for a minute. And I've been laying low. I don't come out my house. So I put the fence up so I can at least sit on my porch sometimes. I can't even sit on my porch because I'm getting recorded 24/7. I mean, I can't do nothing. But people trying to get me in trouble. So the fence, since I had the fence, I had no problem. I'm free, I'm happy, and I tried to sell the house, couldn't sell it, so I gotta stay here. And I'm just trying to, stay in peace. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Well, is there any questions from the board for the applicant, Mr. Durant or Mrs. Durant?
We're just asking y'all please go in our favor so we can keep our privacy beings. That's all we're asking. We didn't know nothing about the rules and regulations of that.
I never heard about no zone. When I bought the house, I thought when you own your property, I mean, you could do what you want. I didn't know nothing about no zone. If I did that, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have done it. I didn't know.
And the man Bob Palmer, he didn't came to our house and give us no notice. My husband actually had to catch him outside to see what this man was doing. He was trying to take pictures at the last
I think somebody across the road, across the street at 1017.
and we wasn't notified until June. We didn't know nothing about this.
Okay. Would y'all like to add anything else, or I think we have questions from the board for the applicant?
No, I don't want to add anything else.
Is there any questions from the board for the applicant?
No.
Okay. All right. There being no questions from the board, is there anybody from the public that would like to speak to this matter? No. Okay. All right. Thank you all so very much, Mr. and Mrs. Durant. I'm gonna bring y'all. I guess y'all can stay back on the phone. Thank you. Sorry. Okay. There being no more questions, the chair will now entertain a motion to either approve or deny the variance request from the members of the board.
I'll make a motion that we deny the request for the variance based upon the following findings of fact. One, that a variance from the terms of zoning ordinance will contribute to the public interest when, because of special conditions, a literal enforcement provision will, in this individual case, result in unnecessary hardship, and that the applicant was looking for a degree of privacy that this fence did provide them. However, it did not meet any of the literal applications of the ordinance in this situation. Number two, that the spirit of the zoning ordinance will not be observed, public safety and welfare secured, and substantial justice done, because the intent of this ordinance is to provide the visibility and openness along the street in this residential area. The current 8-foot fence does not allow that. The front yard closest to the house does have the enclosure, as well as the remainder of the front yard is left open. The fence obscures the view of the home's entrance and windows, with the exception as stated from the garage, as well as the window from the garage. Number three, that there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to this particular piece of property. The layout of the lot and the dimensions are similar to other lots in this particular neighborhood and in the vicinity of the neighborhood. There appears to be no natural, geographic, or infrastructural conditions that are out of the ordinary for this specific piece of property. Number four, that these conditions do not generally apply to the other property in the vicinity, and that other lots in the vicinity are similar to this property layout and appearance as stated, and other properties would also be subject to this fence requirement in the Unified Development Ordinance. Number five, that because of these conditions, the application of the zoning ordinance to this particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property, by requiring adherence to the specifics of the fence ordinance. It would not prevent the use of the home as a single-family dwelling. However, the desired level of the privacy of the current owner would have to be achieved through other means that is approved in the alteration of the house or a vegetated screen. Number 6, that the authorization of a variance will be substantial detriment to the adjacent property or the public good, and the character of the district will be harmed by granting of the variance because the fence does inhibit view of the house from the street and adjacent properties, and a portion of the front lawn, again, as stated, is left open and unobstructed.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Or, all in favor? Ayes have it. The request for this variance is denied. And so we'll, next item on today's agenda. Okay. This is dated June 24th, 2021, appeals number BZA-2021-10. This is a variance request from the number of accessory buildings permitted. This is the last one.
The next one should be 2467.
I'm so sorry. I was in the very last case. Let me back up. My apologies. Okay, we're going to start this one. Date June 24th, 2021. This appeal number will be BZA-2021-08. And this is a variance request from the maximum impervious surfaces ratio in table 2-5 to 1 of the Unified Development Ordinance for a lot in the NC-15 zoning district. The location is 2467 Parsons Gate, tax number being 01221-01-316. The owner of the record is Mahir Patel, and the applicant is the same, Mahir Patel. Zoning district would be the neighborhood conservation -15 in parentheses NC-15. And now the board will hear from the city.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
All right, so the applicant is requesting a variance from the impervious surface ratio, and these are requirements in the NC-15 zoning district. So here is 2467 Parsons Gate. It's phase 6 of Windsor Forest. Here's a little bit closer view, and to the northeast, there's a stormwater pond. So kind of weighing into this case is the stormwater pond that the backyard is designed to drain into without going through city infrastructure. And it is zoned NC-15. So here is the table 2-5.2.1 from the Unified Development Ordinance. And this being an NC-15 district, the maximum impervious surface ratio is 40%. And the applicant is requesting 5% over that maximum surface ratio. So here's the house, 2467 Parsons Gate, the driveway which leads to the backyard. You have the pool and hot tub currently under construction. And that construction will not put them over the impervious surface ratio. It would just be the pool house and associated concrete. And then the picture to the right shows you the proposed location of the pool house in the southeast corner of the lot. And again, just some different camera angles of the backyard. So here's what Mr. Mike Paget submitted and the applicant submitted. This was not a codes enforcement case. They came to the city knowing that they were going to need this variance for the pool house in the top right-hand corner. And the concrete associated is not shown, but Mr. Paget did estimate it to be about 790 square feet. So the lot size is the 32,120. The impervious proposed is going to be about, well, he's saying 1,600 on his calculations. It'll be closer to around 700 square feet. So impervious existing, he's fine now, and he'll be fine with city ordinance after the pool and the hot tub, which is currently under construction, is the pool house and the additional concrete, which will push him over that 45% threshold. So 686 square feet, 5% is the variance that he is requesting. And also just of note, the engineering department, to the northeast, he is adjacent to a stormwater pond. So any excessive runoff caused by the impervious surface would run straight into the pond and wouldn't have to be handled by stormwater infrastructure. And they also believe it'll have minimal impact on adjacent property owners as well. So the variance conditions, that a variance from the terms of this ordinance will not be contrary to the public interest. The applicant is looking for a 5% variance, about 686 square feet on the impervious surface ratio allowed, or he will not be able to utilize his property as desired. Number two, that the spirit of the ordinance will be observed. The intent of the ordinance is to prevent stormwater issues associated with excessive amounts of impervious surfaces. The applicant is requesting a variance for an additional 686 square feet beyond the limits of the code, and the comments from the city engineering department say that it will have minimal impact on city infrastructure, adjacent property owners, and it should drain straight to the stormwater pond. That there are extraordinary exceptional conditions pertaining to this particular piece of property. The lot is located adjacent to the neighborhood's stormwater pond to the rear, as well as a 0.40 acre lot to the south, designated as green space, common area for the neighborhood. There is only one adjacent home to the north. That these conditions do not generally apply to other properties in the vicinity. This lot is one of 10 lots located on Parcel that are adjacent to and drain directly into the neighborhood stormwater pond. That because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance to this particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. Strict observance of the ordinance would not prevent the use of the property as a single-family residential structure. However, it would prevent the homeowner from building the pool house and associated hardscape as desired. And finally, number 6, that the authorization of a variance will not be a substantial detriment to adjacent property of the public good or the character of the district. The proposed structure will be located in the rear yard, which is surrounded by an opaque masonry fence. And again, the comments made by the city engineering department. And that does conclude staff's report.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the members of the board for the city staff at this time?
Just one question for I'm looking at the table 2-5.2.1. So current NC 15 is 40%. So we're looking at a 45%. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. Yes, sir. A 5% variance above what the Unified Development Ordinance states.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
That was my only question.
Part of that 5% is the pool, correct?
Part of the 5% is just the pool house and the associated hardscape. So the pool and the hot tub, looking at the calculations, would be under the 40%.
No, but part of the 5% variance is the surface area of the pool and the hot tub, correct?
I believe it's just the pool house and the hardscape.
I think it says the 4. Oh,
I think it's the total.
so I think it's the 40%. It's still with the pool and the hot tub is good as
Just
when they
okay.
add the
And the
pool.
pool-
Right, because the pool and the hot tub
Get
are
into
currently
the
under
45.
construction. So-
Understood, but I noted that the city engineer noted that even though the pool is considered an impervious surface,
It is the pool. I see what you're
it
saying.
won't overflow. It catches
Right.
the water.
Right, it would take, probably a 25-year storm event for this 3% of impervious surface to even figure into the matter. So you could probably play with that 3% of the pool.
I believe the engineer's report said the total, if you take that into account, it's only a 2% variance.
Gotcha.
Because you have to have 6 inches of rain before the pool overflows.
That's true, but technically, the variance request is for 5% and 686 square feet
Understood.
on paper.
On paper, not right.
Is the pool house currently, right now, is it under construction or they are going through the proper
They are
means?
going through the proper means. They started the pool and the hot tub, but yeah, they're waiting for the board's decision to before the pool house.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions from the board members to the city staff? There being no other questions, is there anybody from the public or the applicant would like to speak? Okay, there being none, the chair will now entertain a motion to either approve or deny the variance request from members of the board.
I'll make a motion. I move to grant the request for variance based on the following findings of fact. One, that this variance in the terms of the zoning ordinance will not be contrary to public interest when, because of special conditions, a literal enforcement of the provision will, in this individual case, result in unnecessary hardship. In that the applicant is looking for a 5% variance on the impervious surface ratio allowed, that he will not be able to utilize his property as desired. 2, the spirit of the zoning ordinance will be observed, public safety and welfare secured, and substantial justice done, because the approximately 3% of impervious surface added by the pool will only lead to an additional stormwater runoff when the pool is overflowed, which will most likely be at least a 25-year storm event. In most storm events, the applicant's impervious surface ratio will exceed the city's maximum only by 2%. The parcel is adjacent to a stormwater pond. Excessive stormwater not infiltrated into the lot will drain directly into the pond without utilizing city stormwater infrastructure. With the parcel backyard draining towards the city stormwater pond, adjacent homeowners will be minimally impacted by the additional 5% impervious surface. 3, that there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular property, namely, the lot is located adjacent to the neighborhood stormwater pond, as well as a 0.4 acre lot to the south designated as green space and common area for the neighborhood. There is only one adjacent home to the north. 4, that these conditions generally do not apply to other property in the vicinity. This is one of 10 lots on Parsons Gate that are adjacent to and drain directly into the neighborhood stormwater pond. 5, that the authorization for a variance will not be of substantial detriment to the adjacent property or to the public good, and the character of the district will not be harmed by the granting of the variance. Because the authorization of variance will not be a detriment to adjacent property or to the public good, and the character of the district will not be harmed, the proposed structure will be located in the rear yard, which is surrounded by an opaque masonry fence. The adjacent homeowners and the city's infrastructure will be minimally impacted.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, the ayes.
Aye.
Variance is approved. So we'll move on to tonight's last case. Okay. All right, this is date June 24th, 2021, appeals number BZA-2021-10. This is a variance request from a number of accessory buildings permitted for a residential lot. Location is 400 Peachtree Court. Tax map number 15219-01-117. Owner of record is LaRodrick McKay. Applicant is LaRodrick McKay. Zoning district will be neighborhood conservation -61. Okay, the board will now hear from the city staff.
Yes, thank you. All right. Right, so the applicant is requesting a variance from the maximum number of accessory buildings allowed by the Unified Development Ordinance. Initially, we thought there was going to have to be a variance for exceeding the amount of space in the front and side yard utilized for parking, which is 35%. After some calculations, he is under that 35% threshold. So the only variance request is for one more accessory building than is allowed by the Unified Development Ordinance. So here's the vicinity map. This is the Southbrook subdivision. 400 Petrie Court. This house is on a cul-de-sac, and it is zoned NC 6.1, which is single family residences. So here is the section that the variance is being requested from. You can have one accessory building other than a detached garage per single family residential lot. And they currently have 3 accessory buildings on the lot. So here's some pictures, the front of 400 Petrie Court. And then the new storage building, this is the one that would exceed the maximum. It's 12 foot by 28 feet. Currently, right now, it does not meet city setbacks, but the owner said that if he is granted a variance, he will move it to be in compliance with the proper setbacks, which would be 5 feet from the side and 10 feet from the rear of the property. And that fence is the rear of the property. Just some different angles of the storage building. This one will be 336 square feet. The existing accessory buildings, the one on the right, they actually bought it for a playhouse for their kids. And then the one on the left is more of a storage building. The old storage building does meet proper setbacks. The playhouse does not. Again, the owner has shown that he wants to meet the proper setbacks. And then the view of the accessory buildings from the street. So you can see they have the wooden fence. It's not very visible from the cul-de-sac. This was a codes enforcement case. I think it was the fact that the concrete was being poured in a driveway. We were worried about too much impervious surface, too much space being used for parking, which was not the case. But in looking and being there, there was an extra accessory building. So that's why the case is before the board today. And the accessory buildings do not exceed the 25% maximum square footage by the Unified Development Ordinance. And also, the only other thing that city staff would recommend is that the fence appears to be on the neighbor's property from the aerials. So we would just recommend that as part of the variance request that a survey be done to make sure we're putting accessory buildings in the correct place. So the variance conditions are that a variance from the terms of this ordinance will not be contrary to the public interest. Literal enforcement of the ordinance is intended to limit the number of accessory structures allowed on site. 2, that the spirit of the ordinance will be observed, public safety and welfare secured, and substantial justice done. The intent of the ordinance is to limit dedicating excessive amount of a parcel square footage to accessory storage. The additional storage building will not surpass the 25% square footage limit permitted by the ordinance. However, the number of individual structures would be surpassed. There are extraordinary exceptional conditions pertaining to this particular piece of property. The applicant is citing the size of their family, including multiple age groups that require special accommodations for storage. This property is located at the end of a cul-de-sac and is irregularly shaped, which affords this lot a larger rear yard than those not located on the cul-de-sac. Number 4, these conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. The property is located at the end of a cul-de-sac and is irregularly shaped, which afford this lot a larger rear yard than those not located on the cul-de-sac. A small number of other lots within the neighborhood located on cul-de-sacs have similar lot configurations. Number 5, that because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance to this particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property as follows. A literal enforcement of the ordinance will not restrict the intended use of the property as a single-family residence. And finally, that the authorization of variance will not be of a substantial detriment to adjacent property, public good, or the character of the district. The location of the accessory buildings and owner's fence minimize the visibility and effective additional storage buildings on adjacent properties. That does end staff's report. The applicant, Mr. LaRoger McKay, is on the line if we have any questions for him.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from members of the board for the city staff?
Oh, I
Yeah.
have one. You said that where the playhouse is now, it was not in compliance. Are they willing to move the playhouse? And
Yes, ma'am. They are willing to move the accessory buildings to meet the proper setbacks, and the city would recommend a survey be done to make sure we have the exact property lines.
what about that other storage building? Because it looks small, and the new one is large. I mean, it's
Right.
house
The-
size. So would they be willing to move that other storage building and then just have the playhouse in that large storage building?
They are requesting to have all three. They will move them to meet setbacks. The older storage building is 144 square feet. The new one is 336
Oh,
square feet.
yeah.
So yeah, it's double the size at least.
Oh, yeah, okay.
The three buildings in question, it's the playhouse, storage building, and a detached garage, or is it a second storage building?
It would be considered, we would consider it a detached garage.
Okay,
So yeah,
so
it would be two accessory buildings over, you have the detached garage, you have an accessory building, then you have an extra accessory building beyond those two,
but the total square footage is,
below the 25%.
so if the playhouse were actually attached to the storage building, it would be one building and he'd be fine.
Yes. If the building department's okay with it. But I'm not sure.
It's not too much space. It's really just the
Quantity.
it's
That's
the quantity
exactly.
and
Yeah.
so that 10 by 12 playhouse is what really puts him over. You know, he could have the detached garage, you could have a storage building of those sizes. But it's the child's playhouse that puts him over the top.
Thank you. Is there any other questions for city staff from the board members? Okay, there being none, the board will now hear from any applicants or the public at this time. Nobody?
And I did see that Mr. McKay was on the line.
Did you want to try to pull him up and swear him in?
Mr. McKay, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, I need to swear him in and I don't see on.
He's muted, maybe.
Mr.
I
McKay?
don't want to force him.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, let me swear you in, sir. Do you promise, or do you promise the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth, Mr. McKay?
Yes, it is.
Okay, you may continue with your presentation. Mr. McKay, you may continue. You can hear us.
Yeah, I heard that. I didn't have anything.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much, sir. Okay, is there any other questions? Need to ask the applicant from the members of the board. Nobody else needs to speak from the public. Okay, all right, there being no other questions. The chair will now entertain a motion to either approve or deny the variance request from members of the board. There-
I'll make a motion. I move that we deny the request for variance based upon the following findings of fact. Number one, that a variance from the terms of zoning ordinance will be contrary to the public interest when, because of special conditions and literal enforcement of the provision will in this individual case result in an unnecessary hardship that has the over limit of use of the buildings. It's intended to limit the number of the accessory structures that are allowed on the lot. Number two, that the spirit of the zoning ordinance will not be observed, public safety and welfare secured, and successful justice done to, because the intent of the ordinance is to limit the dedicated building number. Even though the parcel amount of the storage building will not surpass the 25% square footage limited permitted by the ordinance. However, it is the number of individual structures that will be surpassed and over the limit. Number three, that there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property that, namely, the applicant is citing the size of their family, including multiple age groups that require special accommodations for storage, which puts them over the limit of the parcels. This property is located at the end of the cul-de-sac and is irregularly shaped, and it does afford the larger rear yard. However, the number of buildings is what is at question. Number four, that these conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity, that this property is located at the end of the cul-de-sac and is irregularly shaped, which does afford a larger lot than those not located on cul-de-sacs. A small number of lots within the neighborhood also are on cul-de-sacs and have similar configurations with not the same number of buildings. Number five, that because of these conditions, the application of the zoning ordinance to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property by little enforcement of the ordinance will restrict the intended use of the property as a single family residence. Number six, that the authorization of a variance will be of substantial detriment to the adjacent property or the public good, and the character of the district will be harmed by granting of the variance, because the not just the location of the accessory buildings, but the number of accessory buildings, as well as the owner's fence, minimize the visibility. However, it's still over the allotted amount in the ordinance. I would also like to state that from the findings from the city, that there be a survey of the property to determine that the fence is within the property of the applicant. Thank you.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All right, all in favor, say aye. 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 All right, the ayes have it. The request for the variance is denied. Okay, there being no other item on this evening's agenda, is there anything that members of the board wish to bring forward or discuss while we are all here together?
No, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second. All right. This is adjourned.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.